$100,000 car payments are now a new normal, according to news headlines. In today's video, we are going to take a look at the best cars you can afford in 3 different salary ranges. These salary ranges are $40K, $80K, and $150K per year. A lot of car dealerships these days will try to convince you that you can afford a more expensive car than you can actually afford. And to trick you, they use a simple formula. They just stretch out the loan term so you pay a smaller amount per month, but you keep making these payments for a longer time. The average car loan term right now is 69 months in America, and statistically, people with a lower credit score are more likely to take on an even longer car loan term. Not only that, car loan interest rates are getting higher than usual. This means having a car payment these days is going to be a lot more expensive than it used to be. So in this video, I'm going to cover a couple of car buying rules as well as some ways to save money on car payments. We're also going to talk about whether financing or leasing a car is better, and I will also share my own recommendation for the best cars you can afford at each salary range. Let's start with the first car buying rule. Rule 1, the 35% rule. The 35% rule states that the most you should spend on a car is 35% of your gross annual income. Based on this rule, if you make $40,000 per year before taxes, you shouldn't spend more than $14,000 on a car. If you make $80K a year, this figure goes up to $28,000. And if you make $150,000 per year, that means your max car price should be $52,500. Now, in reality, the 35% car buying rule is really aggressive. This rule is meant for gearheads who prioritize a nice car and are willing to pay a pretty penny for it. But if you just want a basic car that takes you from point A to point B safely and efficiently, then I would recommend being a little more conservative. You could maybe make this rule the 25% rule or even the 20% rule. The 25% rule is much more of a sweet spot. With this rule, you don't just get basic beaters. You can get good cars with lots of features and amenities, but you avoid wasting money on useless bells and whistles that you don't even need. As long as you stay within this guideline, then your car should be affordable. And if you take away anything from this video, just remember the 25% rule, not the 35% rule. Now, in the next section, we're going to be covering monthly payments of a car and what you should be aiming for with your monthly payments. But I think that if you just focus on the actual purchase price of the car, that's what truly matters the most at the end of the day. Another thing that really matters at the end of the day is if you've grabbed a copy of my free beginner's guide to learn about my favorite side hustle. I found one that can make you a full-time income on the side without having to quit your job. If you want to check that out, it's linked down below. Now, let's go over the next car buying rule, which is about car affordability and your monthly payments. Rule 2, the 20-4-10 rule. The first part of this rule is that you should make a 20% down payment on your car. So, if your car costs $30,000 out of the lot, then based on this rule, you should make at least a $6,000 down payment when you buy the car. The reason why experts suggest 20% down is that it'll be a lot easier to handle the loan over time when it comes to your payments. Having 20% on hand ensures that you are in a financially responsible position to actually buy this car. If you finance 100% of a car, you could get into some trouble. Let me explain why with an example. Let's say you buy a car for $25,000 and you finance the entire amount, so the full $25,000. Cars depreciate pretty fast, so let's assume a realistic depreciation of 20% after 1 year. This means that your car is now worth $20,000 at the end of year 1. Now if you try to sell the car, you could get $20,000 for it. But the thing is, you still might owe more than $20,000 on that loan. This means you're underwater on the car itself, and that is a pretty common scenario with most new cars after 1 year. Making a 20% down payment lowers the amount that you have to finance, and it also helps you build equity in the car much quicker. When it comes to brand new cars, you're just throwing money away into a depreciating asset. My personal recommendation for most people is to just buy a used car that is 3 to 5 years old, where most of the depreciation has been chipped away over time already. Then, just maintain it well and drive it for as long as you can. A new Japanese car could easily last over 15 years, as long as you take care of oil changes and other basic maintenance. All right, let's get into the next part of this rule, the 4. The 4 refers to the fact that you should not finance a car for more than 4 years. 4 years is the suggested amount of time because it's going to keep your monthly payments pretty manageable, as well as prioritize paying off the car before it depreciates too much. Also, if you push out your loan term to 5, 6, or even 7 years, what happens over time is that you pay more money in interest. You can see that on the left here. If you are financing a car for 4 years that costs $30,000, your total interest paid is $25.29. However, if you finance it for 6 years, that total interest is now $38.29. So that's over $1,300 you would just be throwing away to interest. I think that a problem we run into in America and Canada, as well as other countries that have auto loans, is that most people just don't have discipline when it comes to buying a car within their means. The 24/10 rule is actually a very reasonable rule. But the truth is, many people don't feel like it's reasonable because it doesn't get them the car that they really want. There's a lot of societal pressure to buy a nicer car as a status symbol, even if you're struggling financially. Look at these calculators. With a 4-year term, you have to pay $552 a month for the same car that costs $386 over 6 years. Because of flexible loan terms, you could have 2 people who both pay $550 per month for their car, but one of them gets to drive a cool BMW, while the other drives a regular Honda Civic. However, it's important to note that even though they both pay the same amount per month, the BMW will likely end up being more expensive overall, because the BMW owner probably has a longer loan term and will end up paying a lot more in interest. Unfortunately, many people will opt for a longer loan period because it allows them to get their dream car that they can't otherwise afford. But not you, because you watch my videos and value true financial freedom over silly flexing. Now let's go into the last part of the 24/10 rule, and that's the 10. The 10 refers to the fact that you should aim to keep your monthly car payments, including insurance and maintenance, to be less than 10% of your gross monthly income. Note that this does not include fuel costs, but you should always factor in fuel costs into your overall budget anyway. Here's a table of incomes between $40,000 and $150,000 per year, and how much of a car payment you can afford. An easy rule of thumb is to simply take your gross annual salary and divide it by 120. That'll get you the maximum monthly car payment that you can afford. So, looking at these salaries, if you make $40,000 a year, you can afford a $333 monthly car payment, including maintenance and insurance. At $80K, that becomes $666 a month, and at $150,000 per year, it'll be $1,250 per month that you can afford. Now, just because you can afford a higher monthly payment, does that mean you should just max it out for the sake of maxing out? Probably not. This is because of opportunity cost. The less you spend on a car, the better, because you can take that extra cash that you were about to spend on car payments and invest it in stocks, or use it for a down payment on a house, or invest into one of a million other things that will make you more money in the long term. Now, a common question is, why is it 10%? Why not 15% or 20% of our gross monthly income? Well, to be honest, this isn't an exact science and there is no universal answer to this. But from years of data and experience, 10% seems to be the sweet spot for most people, according to most financial experts. At 10%, it leaves room in your budget for all the other things you want to spend on. We want to ensure that we have enough money to cover any other financial situations that come up. And so, keeping your car payments to less than 10% of your gross monthly income achieves this goal. Now, let's look at a hot topic of debate among car enthusiasts and personal finance experts. Which is better, buying a car or leasing a car? And then, if you are buying the car, should you finance it or should you pay it all in cash? First, let's consider the buying versus leasing debate. Leasing usually makes sense if you want a new car every 3 or 4 years, or if you just want an overall lower monthly payment. Some other pros of leasing a car include a very low down payment, usually zero warranty coverage, And if you are a small business owner, you could potentially write off some of the lease payments. However, there are cons to consider. There are mileage limits, so if you go over, you have to pay extra. So if you love long road trips, leasing might not be the best option for you. At the end of your lease term, you either return the car to the dealership or buy it outright. In some situations, leasing a car might be beneficial for your financial situation. But for most people, if you want to own a car for a long time, it's better to buy the car because that would be cheaper in the long run. All else being equal, you can think of buying versus leasing as a trade-off between always driving a very new car versus getting the most value for your money in the long term. Next, let's consider buying a car, cash versus financing. When it comes to buying a car, you can either pay for it all in cash or finance it. So which option is best for you? If you're someone who values not having a car payment, or maybe you can get a discount for paying all in cash, then this option might be for you. This especially applies if you're not an investor and have cash sitting in a bank account not earning any interest. By the way, this is a horrible idea, and I highly recommend you invest your money to avoid losing out to inflation. If you already invest your money, financing usually makes more sense due to the opportunity cost of cash. So if you can get a lower interest rate on your car loan than what you can earn through investments, it's better to finance your car. For example, if your car loan is at a 2% interest rate, but you invest in index funds that pay 8% interest per year, you're better off financing your car and investing the extra cash into the index fund. Now, let's get into the fun part. Based on the 25% rule, here are some of the best cars that you can afford at each salary range. First, let's look at a salary of $40,000 per year. The most you should spend on a car at this salary is $10,000. I don't know any reliable car brands that sell brand new cars for $10,000. So let's consider the used car market. For $10,000, you should consider buying a used Honda Civic or Toyota Camry. These Japanese cars are known for being incredibly reliable and low maintenance. They are also very fuel efficient. You can get a 7 to 8-year-old used Civic or Camry for under $10,000 that comes with lots of modern technology and features as well. And I would recommend the same cars for someone earning about $80,000 per year, who should spend no more than $20,000 on a car. You might not get all the bells and whistles of a brand new Nissan or Hyundai, but the reliability and engine quality of Hondas and Toyotas is top-notch. Now, if you're higher up on the income ladder and pulling in a sweet $150,000 per year, you can afford to spend up to $37,500 on a car. This puts you in premium territory, and some of the best cars you can afford would include a 2024 Honda Accord, a 2023 Toyota Prius Prime, and if you're feeling a little German, a 2023 Audi A3. Now let's discuss my top 3 tips for saving money on cars. 1. Insurance rates. Call around and ask for different insurance rates. Insurance companies compete with each other, and switching providers can save you between $100 and $200 extra per month. 2. Buy used. Opt for a used car, especially one that's around 3 years old. This is the sweet spot since it's still relatively new and has already undergone most of its depreciation. 3. Maintenance costs. I would recommend using the True Cost to Own calculator on Edmunds.com. Sometimes luxury cars might have a lower price tag, but cost more in the long run due to maintenance, insurance, and repairs. In October of 2022, the average price paid for a new vehicle in the U.S. was $48,281. Using the 35% rule, the average salary of these buyers should be $137,945 per year, which is far from the U.S. average. This shows that most people buy cars they cannot afford. With all this being said, for most Americans, their car is not even close to their biggest expense. And if you think it's housing, you're wrong. It's not housing either. Watch my video to find out why taxes are the single largest expense for most Americans and how you can legally reduce your tax bill overnight.